Oh man, favorite overall monster. Let's talk about it. So, as you can tell, we're on to day 22 of our Dungeons and Dragons challenge. And today's question, of course, is what is your favorite overall monster? Okay, so one little note before I talk about my favorite all-time Dungeons and Dragons monster is that I'm not going to talk about any of the ones we've already talked about. So even if my absolute favorite monster of all time ever is the Balor, or the Hag, or the Banshee, etc., I'm not going to talk about that. So no beholders, no dragons, none of that stuff. If you guys want to talk about that at the end in the comments below, you can certainly do that. I'm not going to hold you to the same standard. I am going to cheat. I'm going to give you 3 different monsters. I know that's a lot to be cheating for your absolute favorite overall monster for Dungeons & Dragons. But hear me out here, okay? Just hear me out. So the first monster that I want to talk about is one that I think gets the most hate probably the most hate of all the monsters in D&D. And I think that's just because people are just overly tired of seeing it. They're so familiar with this monster. And that is the kobold. I get it. They're silly. They're level 1. And you are so tired of going into a kobold cave and mindlessly slaughtering entire clans in one delve just so you can get to level 2. All right. I know that. But the kobold is such an iconic monster for Dungeons & Dragons, and it is such a great break from just goblins. The kobolds, they're my go-to. I love kobolds so much. I always try to include them in a game if I can, because I know that players have seen them so much, and they're so familiar with them, that I think it's like, okay, we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. I like using them at the beginning of a campaign, especially because the storyline doesn't have to be too deep, and it can give players a brief chance to kind of get acquainted to their characters, get some of the kinks worked out with the mechanics. They can focus on the roleplay because it's kobolds. They know kind of what's coming. Now, on the flip side of that, I also like throwing them up against really high-level players to kind of throw them off their game because they're like, it's another kobold, who cares? And then kobolds start slinging spells at them with magic users and they have levels of fighter. It's a lot of fun for me as a dungeon master to see them kind of wade into combat unprepared for that. So I love kobolds. I think they are one of the foremost staples of Dungeons and Dragons, as much as beholders and as much as actual dragons are. I love kobolds. I love the flavor of them. Those are one of my favorite overall monsters. Okay, so the second monster I want to talk about is another one of my absolute favorites. It is the infamous owlbear. Having your players come across an owlbear early in the game is one of the most fun things you can do as a dungeon master. Because early in the game, everybody's got 1 attack, they've got probably level 1 spells, not very much life, and owlbears can absolutely be very lethal to them. And I just like that sense of they're plodding along, they're following the plot, they're traveling. Oh shit! It's an owlbear. So I love owlbears. That to me, they totally scream Dungeons and Dragons. And that is always, to me, one of the biggest reasons that I'm drawn to a monster. You guys by now kind of can understand what I like. I like really evil, really smart, really Dungeons and Dragon-y monsters. So if I can find a monster that's 1 or 2 or 3 of those categories, I'll probably squeeze them into my game if I can. So there you have it. One of my favorite monsters of all time ever is the owlbear. You know, I think it's time. I think it's time that I come clean because I'm tired of carrying this burden, okay? It hurts me in my soul, and it's time to just come clean with you guys, okay? So for all the world to judge, I will confess my sins. I am a Dritz fanboy. Dritz fanboy. Dritz fanboy.
Dritz fanboy.
There, I said it. It's out there in the universe, okay? I can't take it back now. I love R.A. Salvatore's Dritz series. It is a wonderful, fun, light series. And I know that it is not the best fantasy novel of all time ever, okay? I get that. I get that the series isn't Game of Thrones. It isn't George R.R. Martin. It isn't Sanderson. I understand that. But you know what? It's fun, it's lighthearted, and I'm a Dritz fanboy. So with that being said, my favorite monster of all time in Dungeons and Dragons is one that you wouldn't typically consider a monster, and it is, in my opinion, the absolute pinnacle of one of the most dangerous and deadly things you could possibly throw at your players in the middle of your campaign. And that is the Drow. For you guys out there that have never read any Dungeons and Dragons novels, and you're looking for a place to maybe jump in, to maybe learn a little bit more about the world of Faerun and Forgotten Realms, and you're not sure where to start, I will tell you right here. Go pick up a book called Homeland. This is the first chronological book in R.A. Salvatore's Dritz series. Now, it's actually the fourth book that he released. It was almost identical to Star Wars, where he started with book 4, 5, and 6, and then he went back because people loved his Dritz character so much that they basically begged him to go back and write Dritz's origin story, and so he did. It is one of the best cases of world building I have ever seen, and I'm talking about Disney movies, which, by the way, if you're looking for inspiration for your Dungeons and Dragons game, go watch a couple fucking Disney flicks and steal from there, because they're great at world building. And even that said, his world building in Homeland, R.A. Salvatore's world building for Minzo Baranzan, is phenomenal. It will blow your mind. It is wickedly, wickedly good, and it will, in 5 chapters of this book, you will understand the world of Forgotten Realms way more than you do right now if you haven't been playing in it for a long time. I promise you. So go pick up R.A. Salvatore's Homeland. So Drow. Man, what is there not to like about the Drow? And you know what? Before I continue about just the Forgotten Realms Drow, I will even throw in the fact that I loved Drow as being the pinnacle of what somebody could come across from Tracy Hickman's and Margaret Weiss's Dragonlance series with Raceland, where Raceland goes to the Mage Tower and his test is in fact a Drow elf. So powerful, wicked, unbelievably evil just for the sake of being evil for pleasure. And I'll tell you something else. If you've ever been curious when you look at a stat sheet and say, how could there be like a society of chaotic evil creatures? That doesn't even make sense. That's illogical. Minzo Baranzan, man, the way that city is run with its hierarchy system of matron mothers and ranked families is just fucking incredible. So I like Drow elves, not necessarily just for their raw stat come out of the monster manual abilities. I like Drow elves because of their lore, because of how they're used, the concept of praying and getting spells from Loth, and how they fight and struggle inside their own city, summoning demons to wipe out entire families. How they use kobolds and bugbears and other creatures to their advantage. How they align themselves with the Illithid when it suits them. How they are fearful of driders, which I think is fantastic. And the way that the females are the strongest of the race, and the way that the clerics have their snake-headed whips. Everything about them screams unbelievably deadly if encountered in large numbers, and still very deadly one-on-one. Man, I really don't know what else to say beyond the fact that I just love the lore of the Drow elf in the Forgotten Realms especially. And I think they are probably my favorite monster of all time ever for Dungeons and Dragons. So there you go, guys. What is your absolute favorite monster in Dungeons and Dragons? And I'm going to totally open the book up on this. So 5th edition, 1st edition, Pathfinder, whatever. Everything is fair game. Bring it on. Let's see what your absolute favorite monster is. But most importantly, tell us why. Because we want to see why that monster means so much to you. That's what makes this challenge fun. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games as much as I do, I'd love to have you subscribe. I'll be putting out new videos every week on DM tips, player tips, tutorials, and more, so if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, just hit the subscribe button down below and come join us. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cody, and as always, may your games be filled with awesome memories and even better friends. I'll catch you guys next time.
Stupid murder hobos.